With that, I'll let Todd give his background. Please, as always, turn your cell phones off. Don't turn them off, but put them on vibrate, please, and not be disruptive. And at the end, about an hour, 2 hours from now, it'll be the prize giveaway on what I call a vendor bingo. So, Todd, take it away, man.
Thank you. Welcome to the group that stayed around for the afternoon talk. I appreciate you. How many of you were in the room for the last conversation with John? Anybody? So we had a couple. All right, excellent. So for the rest of you, it won't be quite as much a review, but it's a little background. Ironically, what's so wild about this, the fact that John and I are speaking back to back. 1998, came out of Texas A&M. He hired me at KPMG here in Houston, and was one of the employees in the information risk management practice. Hadn't seen John in about 20 years until this, like 2 black hats ago. Ran into each other, we started reconnecting, and then found out last week we were both presenting here. And when the LinkedIn deck came out calling him John Dickerson, funny story is then we found out we were presenting on the same topic back to back. So wasn't much we could do, but I'm a global practice manager for AI application and API security at Worldwide Technology based out of St. Louis. I live in Columbus, Ohio, even though I'm a native Houstonian, born and raised in Texas. Been in Ohio now 25 years. Graduated from A&M, went on to KPMG, and I earned my CISSP in 2002, so a little later than John and a little less gray hair up top, but we have a very similar background, both coming out of A&M, both starting our careers in cyber, and now here we are again speaking together 25 years later. So before I get started in kind of this evaluation, I wanted to define AI security, and in a lot of the talks that I do, a lot of customers are really confused about there's AI for security, there's AI, or security of AI, there's security of AI systems, security of AI usage. So how do you define and delineate what the differences are between the different types of AI security? So in the theme of Terminator for the conference, I put some labels here on it, but think about security of AI systems as your AppSec for AI. Your security of AI usage is the usage of what's on your endpoints, what's on your desktops, what's on your mobile phones. Shadow AI is really the key theme here in the usage world. Deepfake protection is another area that we focus on. And lastly is security by AI. That's AI for cybersecurity. And that's the piece that I'm going to talk a little bit about today is I work with a group of practice leaders at Worldwide, and a lot of our practices are focused on different areas of cyber, whether it's identity and access management, threat prevention, SIEM, you name it, security operations. And all these guys are getting approached by their vendor partners saying, hey, I've got these new whiz-bang AI features, and they want these guys to look at it. So we're helping those practice leaders take and think about how these vendors are securing their AI. So we're applying the AI, security of AI systems to what the security of, what cybersecurity vendors are offering in their products. And that's the theme of the talk today. So different categories that fall into this, whether we're talking about the data, the model, the usage, guardrails, et cetera, in the security of AI, shadow AI discovery, data security, safety and toxicity throughout the usage piece. And then in the deepfake world, we're now getting into how do we apply biometrics, how do we use human awareness, human liveness detection, and also now really flipping the script of how do we start to put authenticity and verification into our content so that we can prove it's our content versus a deepfake creation. And then finally in the security by AI, risk and compliance management's a topic, threat and vulnerability management, security operations, identity access management, AppSec. All of these are different use cases of AI in cybersecurity. And then before we get really into the content of how do you evaluate, you've got to understand the threat mapping and the threat landscape and what the threats are to you because of the use of generative AI or the use of AI in general. And we focus on, again, the same buckets: AI usage security, AI system security, adversarial usage, AI platform. And out on the right, this Gen AI extended risk, we can't hesitate to focus on some of these non-technical AI extended risks, which are over-reliance, the risk of not using AI, and legal and regulatory implications. Over-reliance is probably one of the key risks that I talk about more than anything. For the couple people that were in the story or in the presentation with John last, he talked about a story where he did a presentation, was talking about the OWASP top 10. Very similar situation, which kind of freaked me out. It tells me that some of the LLM models have common problems from a hallucination standpoint. In May, I was actually on a plane to Sacramento to do a talk to ISC Squared out at Sacramento at a evening event. And one of the concepts that we were talking about was the difference between the OWASP top 10 for machine learning and the OWASP top 10 for LLMs. And I had used ChatGPT the night before to build a table comparing the two sets of OWASP top 10 lists. And I built this, had it all in my presentation. I'm reviewing it on the plane on the way out. And I start to look at the OWASP top 10 for LLMs. And I realized this doesn't look right. Something doesn't look right. And it was a completely made up list of vulnerabilities and OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities for and had I not caught that on the plane, I would have put that up in the middle of that presentation in front of 75 CISSPs and somebody would have noticed. And, but that's what I tell the people, do not trust all of the content. You have to verify and you have to validate or ask it to, hey, are you sure? And it will then go out and use trusted sources or external sources and will validate, is that answer accurate? So keep that in mind as you're using generative AI. This is the same content you saw earlier, but this is when I talk about the state of AI security in the industry and current industry trends that we're seeing. And this is really focused on AI systems and usage, but some of the key themes are that red teaming is really popular right now. AI systems and red teaming, how to red team an AI system is very different than how you red team a traditional web application. And especially because you have to focus on data and you have to focus on, how do I get data out of this system? And is the data that's coming out of the system something I should see? Am I authorized to see the data? Thinking about red teaming from a data lens and not so much the jailbreaks and the cool things of, hey, can I get this LLM to talk like a pirate, or can I get this LLM to tell me how to cut down a stop sign? These are the things you hear about in the news and the buzzword, the Reddit conversations. But the reality is, what I care about is, can I get the proprietary data out of the LLM, the data that was used to train the model, or the data that's generating the RAG sources into that model. So, and then indirect prompt injections. These are hidden prompt injections that people are starting to put around the internet, because if you've got an LLM model that's trained to go out and read a web page for content, and now I can put a hidden piece of text into that website that it's going to read, I can now prompt inject that with false information and mislead that LLM to present fake content back to the user in the response. And we're starting to see more and more secure by design. If any of you are AppSec engineers, secure by design and some of the efforts that CISA and Jen Easterly and the teams are focusing on are now starting to get or pushed over into the AI system lens. And getting data scientists to start thinking like AppSec engineers is a challenge. I was with some data scientists a few weeks ago at a briefing in Oklahoma City, and I showed them in an internal app that we have how to do a jailbreak using, basically taking a request that we stop 9 times out of 10, or 10 times out of 10 with human language, but I took the same request and put it into a hex converter, and I took the human language, converted it to hexadecimal binary with an odd encoding algorithm, put it right back into the model, and it actually spit out what we were trying to get the model to tell us that it shouldn't have. And my chief data scientist, I was traveling at the time, he turns around, he goes, "Oh, I can fix that." And I said, "I know you can fix it." I said, "But do you want to play whack-a-mole as a security guy and continues to fix these one-off vulnerabilities, or do you want to put a security guardrails product in front of your LLM and actually let the security company do it on a regular basis, and that's what they're trained and what they're good at?" So keep that in mind as you're talking to all of your data scientists and all of your guys that are building these AI applications. They want the security in the application. They want to own it. Just like if you think about cloud in 2000, everybody said, "Oh, we're going to do native cloud security. We're going to do all these things that we did with the infrastructure. And here we are several years later now going, hey, maybe we should overlay some different security controls on top of all these cloud infrastructures." As we move into the content for now, focusing on that's the state of AI security. I want to move into more of the content of how do you evaluate cybersecurity, or how do you evaluate cybersecurity vendors for AI, and why do we need to be more conscious of what their claims are. And this is some data that I'm going to start with, which came out of the 2024 Dark Trace State of AI Security Report. and it focused on 1,800 respondents just asking some survey questions around what the current thoughts are on AI in the enterprise are. So in current environment, current capabilities, how many of you would say you're adequately prepared to defend against AI adversarial attacks? Show of hands, probably fairly low. Ironically, the majority of respondents all agree that, hey, it's either I strongly agree that I'm not prepared or somewhat agree that I'm not prepared. Very few organizations, less than 5%, think that they are adequately prepared to handle AI threats. This slide, these 4 or these 8 topics, I'd like for you guys to, I'm going to pause here for a minute, let you read through these. And I'd like to see a show of hands of, or just some people to open up and talk here. What do you think your #1 priority would be if you had an unlimited budget right now and unlimited access to people? What would you do to address AI threats from these 8 choices? Any takers? Yeah, well, just for topic purposes, I mean, you're gonna see the rankings from 1,800 respondents here in just a moment. But I'm just kind of curious in this room, how many of you would actually think that you want to increase cybersecurity staff? You had unlimited budget, you had unlimited access to resources. That would have been my #1 answer as well, knowing the shortage we've had for how many years in this industry. But I want to show you the results. Well, you can. But out of 1,800 respondents, 11% picked increased security staff, which blew my mind. But 58% said they'd add AI-powered security tools to supplement their existing solutions. So this goes back to the theme of a lot of conversations we have about, hey, AI is going to replace my job. And I think right now this is a great messaging of, if you think about security leaders, they're thinking about how can AI augment my staff's job. So it goes back to that eternal message I'm telling people on an ongoing basis. It's not going to replace your job, but somebody who knows how to use it will replace your job. So you better learn how to use it because that is the key. AI needs to be a skill set for all of us as cyber professionals. So how many of you were in the business in 2004 and remember the Cisco self-defending network campaign? So if you remember, hey, we had all of this, all my networks are going to fix myself. So I kind of joke, and this is a little bit, there's nobody that works for Cisco in the room, is there? Before I get in trouble, I work for the largest Cisco partner in the world. So just as a disclaimer. Yeah, exactly. So here we are 20 years later, and I joke that this is kind of a made-up thing, but imagine if you had gone to ChatGPT and said, hey, ChatGPT, I work for Cisco, and we're now reinventing a marketing concept for 2024 now that AI is cool, and we're going to reinvent self-defending networks, and I would like you to help me with a marketing campaign. And this is what I imagine it would spit out, which is the logo for their new products portfolio, which is HyperShield. Now, I say this in jest. I joke a little bit about it as HyperShield. I say, but the reality is that where we're at right now from a marketing standpoint is every vendor, if you walk the floor, any of you got the chance to go to RSA or Black Hat this year, some of the vendors, this show was actually surprisingly refreshing that I didn't see all of the AI claims at this show floor here in Houston. But every vendor out there has got AI in their marketing messaging one way or the other. And they have the feature that you need, and you need it right now. So I just leave that up there and let you. But so the BS meter goes off significantly for me. And what I do here at Worldwide, I joke here that we manage, there's 2 of my guys in the back, but on an ongoing basis, when people ask me what I do, we manage vendor chaos. These are 3 of the internal market roadmap slides or market landscape slides that we maintain. One is for the modern app and API security portfolio. One is security by AI and emerging security solutions and security by AI. And then the other one is the security of AI and the AppSec for AI down at the bottom. And these are nothing more than to show how crazy the startup market is, how crazy the cyber market is from a marketing standpoint, how much capital is going into these industries. and every one of these vendors has AI claims. But where will AI end up impacting cyber the most? And this one's really telling, because your number one place where security leaders believe AI is going to impact them the most is improving their threat detection in general. And when you walk out on the show floor at Blackout, or you walk out and everybody says, hey, I've got this new Gen AI, I've got this new LLM that's going to do this, and then, well, what are you going to do for me? What I tell people, well, I'm not going to give away the punchline of that just yet, because as we move through this, 95% of the professionals all agree that AI is going to help their organization from a cyber standpoint. But 26% of those professionals actually only report being able to articulate what the difference is between different generative AI types. So before we get there, before we get into the real punchline there, I want to talk about these different types of generative AI and point out a few things. Generative AI is the newest flavor down here at the bottom that became popular thanks to ChatGPT in November of 2022. But these other ideas and other machine learning, unsupervised machine learning, deep learning, all of that's been in use for many years. And cybersecurity's done a really good job of using machine learning for pattern matching, threat detection, things like that. But now the generative AI has become the new thing. If you don't understand one thing from this presentation, what I would say, generative AI does not help you find threats, does not help you find vulnerabilities. It helps you generate new human-like text. It helps you generate new creative content. The generative is the key word in generative AI. It's great at writing threat reports. It's great at summarizing threat intel information it might get from other sources, but it is not going to help you find security issues. And if you get a vendor that's starting to say, hey, I've got new threat detection based on this LLM, run like hell, because they don't know what they're talking about. And that's one of the key messages here, that types of AI expanded to impact security. Down at the bottom, generative AI. Most respondents said that is the number one AI that's going to help impact my cybersecurity, but yet they think that the number one use case they're going to get out of it is improving threat detection. So big wrong answer. Those two don't go together, and I stress that to people on a regular basis. So when you go to talk to vendors, what is the AI they're offering you going to give you? Is it going to give you automation? Is it going to give you augmentation? Or is it going to actually give you some sort of autonomous functionality? Many of the vendor claims that are out there right now are nothing more than what they were advertising the previous year as automation has now become AI. And I stress that heavily because the marketing team says, hey, we've got to turn this automation stuff into AI, and they're doing it regularly. If you really want to get into, is it augmentation, find out, is it going to give me the ability to gather information? Is it going to give me contextual understanding of the information it's ingesting and the data it's ingesting? Is it going to give me the ability to upskill my team members? Until I get that, I really am not getting the true benefits of AI. Automation's great if you can get it and it can help take mundane tasks off of your operators. That's great, but it's still not, I don't call that artificial intelligence. And then as you get into more of the big claims that are happening right now is this idea of autonomous agents, and now you've got companies out there saying, hey, I can sell you autonomous SOC agents that'll work for your SOC teams, things like that. There's great promise in the technology, but just be very wary as you go into it. Hey, it's a very early stage, and some of those capabilities are phenomenal when they demo. They're phenomenal when you start to see this, but then you now have to start to think about compliance impacts. What are these going to do to me from a regulatory standpoint, from explainability and auditability? Can I prove how that autonomous agent made a decision for my business? Can I prove that he made the same decision based on the same facts 10 times in a row, or did he hallucinate two or three times out of 10? So as you move through this process and you start to think about what are the questions I need to keep in mind as I speak to any vendor, and this really can apply to any AI-powered solution, whether it's cybersecurity solution or not. If you're wanting to buy just a meeting note taker for the enterprise, and I stress that's a great example of meeting note takers are things that your employees want, but they introduce risk to your organization. So making sure that you're picking the tools that your business needs and sanctioning them, doing a third-party security review, and delivering what they need. But as you start to evaluate tools, think about do I have a problem that this vendor's AI is going to address? That's number one. If I don't have the problem, don't get sucked into the coolness of generative AI and the features and the marketing hype. Do I need AI to solve a problem? Does AI integrate with the other tools? Integration's my second key point. How many of you have 50 plus cyber tools in your enterprise? I'd say most are going to have at least 50 is kind of the low number. I've seen as many as 150, 200 in different tools rationalization exercises that we've done over the years. If I'm going out and I'm buying AI features from vendors now, am I adding more tools? Yes. So instead of buying AI features from 20 of my 50 vendors, I probably want to look for who are the 2 or 3 AI features that I can integrate with all of my other tools. Integration is going to be key. Or a lot of vendors are saying, hey, I've got this great AI feature, but they're using it to try to lock you more into their platform play. And hey, if you buy this feature, it's going to give you all these great functionalities. And then 6 months later, they're going to be like, but if you want to use all that cool stuff that I told you about, now you got to buy these other 3 products and build out the rest of your platform from me. Don't get caught into that platformization by using AI as a hook. Is the AI transparent? Go back to that from a auditability and regulatory standpoint. You're going to have explainability. You're going to have auditability. So make sure the vendor is able to prove that. Is the AI neutral and without bias? Key point. A lot of people forget about some of the overall safe and responsible AI functions as they're evaluating this. So bias, safety, toxicity, all of that's got to be pulled into it. And then you get into the real security meat. How's the data used? How's the data secured? What are the models? How does the vendor show provenance throughout the entire development life cycle? And does the vendor have the skill sets and experience? That's one of the fundamental questions you can ask right away. How many data scientists do you have? And when they look at you, go, yeah, we've got 50 developers. I'm like, well, no, do you have data scientists? There's a difference. And understanding so how do you easily remember this? So I've come up with this acronym to kind of help you. This idea of fitness. And we started there on the previous slide looking at the questions. Do you have a fit or need? Is the AI going to help improve my cyber program? Is it going to integrate with my current tools? Is it going to be transparent and auditable for decisions and outputs? Is it neutral? Is the AI model designed and trained to be fair and unbiased? And does the vendor have the experience necessary in the data science skill set necessary to provide what they're claiming? And then we get into security. And in security, we can dive really, really deep. And I'll show you a couple slides here in a minute where we can dive deep into whether it's the idea of the data, the model, the usage. And then finally, we wrap it up with safety and ethics. Does the vendor demonstrate the safe and ethical use? So one of the things you really have to worry about is what is the vendor's goals with AI? What are their especially with data collection and things like that, a lot of vendors are doing data mining and data lake collection, and you have to understand what is the safety and ethics of why they're doing their AI, what's their AI mission in trying to offer those features to you. So when we talk about fit and we get into specific needs, and again, I'm going to this slide deck will be provided to everyone through the conference website afterwards. So these are useful tools for takeaways and things that you can use when you're questioning your vendors. I'm not going to read through all of these, but overall, I've given you a set of starting questions for each of the 7 letters here of fitness. Identify specific needs, get strategic alignment, and what is the customization potential in your organization. And we talk about integrations. I can't stress integrations enough. Find out what the vendor's goals are from where they're going to let you tap into your own data. Because if it's a SIM vendor that's saying, hey, I'm going to give you this great LLM assistant or this great AI assistant that's going to allow you to do natural language queries against all your traffic over in your SIM alerts over the last 3 months, but I'm not going to let you read anything but the closed source of my vendor's data, and in order to get everything else, you're going to have to bring all your other events into my data lake via some new process that they want you to get, or you're going to have to make a replica of the data into an S3 bucket that I'm going to be able to read your logs, things like that. These are all very important process questions that you have to ask the vendor and how they're going to use the data, how it's going to integrate with your existing environment. Transparency. Can't stress transparency enough. What is the vendor doing for, how are they building their architecture for their LLMs? Is it a multi-tenant design? Is it a single tenant where they're going to replicate their models one off for every customer? Can you do it in an air gap model on your environment? All of these architecture decisions and how the vendor's building the AI is going to become critical as you evaluate. Are they transparent, and are they willing to give you that information? Are they willing to give you an AI bill of materials for their models? We've seen a lot of vendors that are unwilling to share that AI bill of materials when asked for early on. And I think we've got to demand transparency from the vendors with all of the AI usage and all of the AI implementations that they're doing. And having open communication, regular dialogue, make sure they're giving you access to the right folks, and especially the data scientists and the people that are responsible for the AI development in the organization, making sure that you as a customer have access to the right folks and have open dialogue. And then neutrality. Again, this is especially in terms of if you've got AI that's going to be making decisions based on augmentation of employee usage, making sure that that the vendor has a program for how they're going to prove that they've addressed bias, or how they've approved neutrality in the system. And then experience. I can't stress this one enough. I've seen this numerous times where we're talking to vendors that are bringing out this cool new AI feature, and we start talking to them about, well, who's building it? Who's doing it? How'd you get it? Are you outsourcing it? No, our development team's just taken some of their guys and they've focused on building well, what's their data science background? And you find out there's nothing there. They're going out and they're getting some of these pre-built models off of Hugging Face. Do they have a supply chain risk management program for how they're bringing these models into the environment? Absolutely not. They don't even understand what we're talking about when we start talking about software supply chain. How are you scanning the models for vulnerabilities before you even let them be used in the environment, et cetera? And then security. So if you'll notice here, for the purposes of this talk, I've only got the S Security 1. I have 5 detailed slides for security that I'm happy to share with folks afterwards on a email basis. But this is just the high-level security questionnaires for model and data. And then we go into very, very in-depth, hundreds and hundreds of questions for third-party risk evaluation of how is the company securing their models? Are they using foundation models and training their own models? Are they getting pre-trained or models and using RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, and trusting inference as the results, and being able to take those and point it at data sources? Are they just giving you a pre-trained model and letting you point it at your data sources? All of these model security questions are very important. And how do I prove that if this is a multi-use model where if I've got a vendor that says, hey, I'm going to give you a copy of a pre-trained model that we've done, I'm going to let you connect it to all of your own data sources, your data lake. How did the vendor prove the provenance of that model from the point where they brought it into their world, they started training it, and now they're giving you that copy of that model to get started with? How do you know that there's been no supply chain tampering in that process? Those are all critical questions to think about as you move through. And then finally, safety and ethics. I can't stress this enough, going back to the compliance side. You've got now, with the security, privacy, and ethics, this goes into the regulatory sides for GDPR, for the CCPA out in California. How is the privacy and private data being put into the model? Understand that, make sure that the vendor is sharing the privacy compliance information with you. So wrapping it up, and kind of some parting thoughts. I think I think I finished up a little bit early. I was speeding through that quite a bit. But overall, I just say the AI you use today is going to be the worst AI you experience. And any of you that have been kind of on this journey the last year, if you've followed ChatGPT and you've followed it from like the early models that they released in November 2022 to some of the latest models that, if any of you have played with Strawberry in the last week or two, which is the 1.0 or 01 model that's out in early access, the evolution of the AI that we're getting access to in the public is rapidly changing. The reasoning, even hallucinations are starting to get fewer and fewer. Hallucinations, I firmly believed 6, 8 months ago that we would probably not see a good answer to hallucinations for quite some time, because there was this point of diminishing returns where the power and cooling in order to train the models to eliminate the hallucination problem was just not going to get there fast enough until we hit some of the environmental points in time, like nuclear fusion, because there just wasn't enough power for the data centers. Now, there's been some recent developments where people are starting to understand how the noun-verb responses coming out of the models are starting to prove that, hey, maybe we can address the hallucination problem through data science, not so much just through training. So there's going to be some new developments in the next few, probably months. Before I was thinking 5 to 10 years before we saw hallucinations peak over or under 20% of the time. And now we might see it here in the next 5 or 6 months, amazingly enough. But remember to maintain your AI fitness. So we talked about the acronym. Do you have a fit? Does it integrate well into your environment? Is the vendor being transparent with you? Does the model have neutrality? Does the vendor have experience? And is the security sound? And is the safety and ethics good inside of what the vendor's doing? And really focus in on the data, the model, and don't forget the usage. Making sure that even if the data and the model sounds good from the customer, if I implement this in my environment, how are my users now using it securely? You can have the best AI in the world, and if you don't have data controls on the input and the output of what are my users putting into the models and putting into the prompts, then you can now start to have other data problems that weren't created by the vendor in the model problem, but it's created by user lack of education. Some of the best intention employees out there in the world are using AI to try to be better at their job, to be faster at their job. They're scared they might lose their job, so they want to use AI to be more efficient. But if you don't teach them about over-reliance, you don't teach them about hallucinations, you don't teach them about data loss and what happens if I upload a PDF file with corporate data on it into ChatGPT. If you don't teach those general IT users what those risks are to your corporation, they don't know. And they're trying to get ahead, they're trying to be better. So making sure you have user awareness is really step number one, and keeping that foundational.
No questions.
Absolutely.
So in relation to that last piece, how many of the Fortune 500, not 100, 500, I'll say Fortune 100, know what the proper security controls and usage is to be able to teach
Yep.
A program to their IT staff, much less company wide? How many of them really know? I would submit most of them don't.
They don't, I wouldn't say they don't know. They don't know how to. I think most organizations, if you said that 12 months ago, yes, they didn't know. There's been enough attention to it in the last year, and almost every Fortune 500 now has a governance group that's saying, hey, what's my AI governance strategy? But the key to the but to that is most of them are talking about bias, they're talking about ethics and fair use. They're not talking about security and data. And the security and data teams are late to the governance teams calls. They're late to the party. And then you get into now I've got tons of customers we're meeting with daily that are saying, hey, I've got a great governance framework that's mapped to NIST, or I've got a great governance that's mapped to CSA. What are the new novel, the 12 or 15 new things that apply to generative AI that I didn't have in my controls framework before? And that's a common project that my teams we're working on daily with customers, is mapping existing controls frameworks and showing them the gaps that need to be updated. And then how do you get the technical controls in place to be able to enforce, measure, and have visibility into those problems?
And one more question. How many of them have even heard the term AI hallucinations?
Not a lot, especially as you trickle down. That's probably hallucinations and over-reliance are two of the key conversations I have on a regular basis. And I stress to everybody that I even talk to people, I talk to universities we're talking to universities that are saying, hey, I want to do an awareness program for AI, but they can't do it till the governance team puts it into the governance documents to mandate that they do the awareness policy. And I'm like, do it as a public service campaign, and even if, because you're waiting on risk for, hey, can I put it into where I can force people to pay attention to the 5 minutes of training? Build the 5 minutes of training now, put it out there as a public service announcement, and then when you get the compliance documents to be able to force it, then make them come back and sign off on it. But get the message out. Don't wait, don't delay. Start teaching the users what the risks are.
What would you say from a CISO's perspective is their top few things as a company begins that AI readiness march for their network? What are the top things they're concerned about?
You threw me with the keyword for their network. I mean, for the enterprise overall, or okay. For the enterprise overall, it's usually going to be the acceptable use policy is the first question. Hey, what do I need to teach? What do I need to put out for an acceptable use policy to teach my users what they're allowed and what they're not allowed to do? And then it's a matter of, now it's going, what are they already using? What's my shadow AI problem out there? That's the second key. So, A, can I tell them what they're allowed and not allowed to do? And then how do I see what they're already doing that I didn't know they were already doing? And then, so that's on the usage side. On the development side, it's how many of my developers have already turned on SageMaker in AWS? How many of them have already turned on Vertex AI and the GCP workloads they're building that I don't even know they're doing? And is my architecture review board even up to speed to even ask the right questions to know whether my developers are already building these functions into new applications and new microservices? So you've got, it's shadow AI of shadow AI usage, shadow AI from a development standpoint as well. Think back to the early 2000s when we were talking about shadow AI or shadow IT in the cloud. Do it now, but accelerate it imagine having shadow cloud or shadow IT in a cloud in a very fast car, and it's moving much, much faster than we ever looked at back in the early 2000s. Yep. Right. So it's going to come down into your testing strategy, and I would probably defer an expert answer on that to some of the data science guys that are building the algorithmic outputs. But from a testing standpoint, I would say having good test cases and that you're asking the same question to the same model repetitively over time. And is it giving you the same auditable and verifiable output 10 out of 10 times? Script those, get your test scripts and your test harnesses to see, am I getting the right responses enough that I trust this? And we've seen a lot of use cases where corporations were building public-facing generative AI models and they pulled back because their tests showed that, hey, I can't trust these answers. Or it's not always, there was a great example of public-facing news was Air Canada. Released a very early LLM to the public, and it started giving answers about refund policies and different answers to different customers, and they ended up getting sued and had to pay out a class action lawsuit of 7 figures to users because it was telling people they could get refunds on flights that they shouldn't have. And it was a hallucination. It wasn't a incorrect, it was giving some people the right answer and some people the wrong answer. And it was pure hallucinations coming out of the model.